Hi there, Mark here again. Welcome to my build guide part 2 of the Tamiya Terra Scorcher. Let's get straight on with it. This is where we got to last time. We got the front and the rear gearboxes all complete, and we finished off parts bag A. So now it's time to open parts bag B and get on with step 12. Step 12's building up the universal shafts. As you can see, I've made a start and I've already done the 3. So I'll just show you now how to make the last one up. Now this is a bit fiddly, so I've zoomed right in for this. So you're going to need your axle, you're going to need your shaft, you're going to need the silver drive pin or shaft as it calls it. Then you've got a very small BB20, you'll see where that goes in a sec. And you need the tiny black grub screw. There it is. I don't think it's focusing, but that's on there, I assure you. And the first thing we do is to get your BB20, and what we want to do is partly screw that grub screw in. Now don't screw it in all the way, because we still need to get the pin through that hole, and there is only a thread in one side of this part, BB20. Okay, so when you've done that, as it shows here, you need to put some of your AW grease on these parts of the components. I won't do that now, I'll just show you to put it together, else I'm going to get grease all over the place. Okay, so if we get the shaft, what we need to do is put your BB20 into the shaft with the grub screw pointing up, and then put that inside your drive cup with the slot pointing upwards. You might not be able to see on this camera, but I'll do my best. And then you need to put the pin through the whole lot. It needs to be flush, that pin, with the cup, and just test it out that you can rotate the shaft in the drive cup. And then what I need to do is just fold it back so you can see the grub screw and give it a tighten up, and it's as simple as that. So once you've made up your 4 shafts, they're all exactly the same, we can move on to step 13, which is the upper arms. These are adjustable turnbuckle arms, and again I've whizzed ahead and I've made 3 of them up. You have to make 2 sets the same. As you can see in the diagram, you've got A and B, and the only difference is where the ball joints are located with respect to the hex adjuster. So let's quickly do one, the last one. I find it easier to hold onto that hex with a pair of pliers. Now the side that's threaded all the way along up to the hex is a normal right-handed thread, so you get your BB31, which is a 6mm ball end, and that'll screw on like a normal nut or bolt, twisting it clockwise. We turn it round, but when we come to the other side, you have to screw it on as if you're unscrewing, so you're screwing the left hand thread. And the reason for that is you can adjust this by putting a spanner on that hex and turning it, and it'll pull both the ball ends in together or push them apart depending which way you turn it. So then just adjust this till it matches that 13.5mm length in the diagram. And then, like I said, you just need to match that up with the diagram. So you make 2 front and 2 rear, and if we look at match them up to the diagram again, if we look, you've got the hex, and then you've got this longer, which is a BB13 6mm ball joint on the left, and then we've got the smaller, just the ordinary ball end on the right hand side. For this one, it's the opposite way around. So for this one I need to do the same, so I need to get the end closest to the hex needs to be the BB14, which is a 6mm ball. We just need to pop that in. And on the other hand we need the brass BB13, which is the long piece, and that needs to go in the other end. You just used a pair of pliers to push that in. So now there are the 4 sets made up matching the diagram. Step 14 is nice and easy, it's just making up the rear arms. You're going to need 2 D1s and 2 C1s. They're all the same, doesn't matter which one you use. Put your BB12, which is a 5mm ball connector, into that one hole on that side. I've already made up one of them. It's exactly the same for both. So there's the ball there in that hole. Simply get part C1. You need your 1150 bearing on the inside. Push that in, and then one on the outside. Then you need a BB9, one of the dreaded screw pins, and that just holds through the bottom there into the end of the arm. And simply get one of your drive shafts, poke it through the bearings, and what I do is, because this is just going to fall out again, you just get a spare body clip, put it through the hole where the pin's going to go eventually, and that'll keep it in place while we carry on with the build. So when you've done, you should have 2, if you note the orientation, like that. For step 15 you need to get your rear gearbox assembly, because we're going to fit the rear upper arms, and again follow the orientation of that diagram. You need 2 of the arms you've made before, an A and a B. So basically the hex on the upper arm is going to point to the left on both of the upper arms, like so. So we need to get this plastic part, which is a G8, push that over the brass connector, and this needs to fit in this gap here and get the pin in place. And the same for the other side. A word of warning, try not to over tighten these step screws, because that's what will crack this plastic housing around it, so you just be careful not to go too tight. I don't think it will fall out anyway. So let's get the other one on, the other side. And to finish this step, we just need to put in the gearbox joints, or the output shafts as I call them. You've got a long and a short, but it does show we need to put an O-ring into the end of each one, and they're the black O-rings, it says. So just give that a poke in, and the same with the other side. I always find it helps to put a little bit of grease in that drive cup to help slide those O-rings in. Okay, so then we need to put some grease on these parts of the joints, there and there, and just put them into the gearbox case. Step 16, we're going to attach the rear arms that we made. I've done the first one again, obviously they're both the same, so we'll just go through the process. So we'll just move that out of the way, get the lower arm, fit it in there like so, and then we've got our screw pin, the long BB8, and it goes in the bottom hole of the 2 holes there. Push it through, and then we'll screw this in. I noticed there's a lot of problems with the front kind of version of this part here, but this part that we're screwing these pins into now, these screw pins, is a soft plastic, whereas the front, which is the A5, which is renowned for breaking, is the brittle plastic. But we'll look at that more when we get there. Okay, so we just do that up. Make sure you pop your drive shaft into the cup before we put the top arm on, which uses a 15mm machine screw, and we poke that through the top joint, the ball joint, put a washer on, through the hole, and simply fix with a flange. nut. And it should look like this when you've done. Step 17 is building up the rear stabiliser. So we need to make up two of these arms with the ball ends on first. Ends up looking like this. It goes onto the BB10 3B32 shaft. Now this is just an ordinary threaded bar, so when you screw on the 5mm adjusters, you can just screw them up against each other. They're both right-handed threads, and match it up to the diagram as usual. Then we need the stabiliser rod itself. They are different. They look a little bit similar, but this rear one is a lot thicker than the front, and it's got no thread on the end, whereas the front one's got threads on. So you want the one without the threads. Get that ball connector, and then you need to put in your BA5, which is the tiny silver grub screw, and just nip that up. And the same on the other side. And now we're ready to move on to step 18, where we're going to fit these to the rear suspension. So along with the parts you've just made, all we need is part G5 and 3 of the 3x12 self-tapping screws. Again, note the orientation. You need to assembly this way up, and we're going to put on like adjusters first. They simply clip onto those ball joints. Easier said than done. And then put your stabiliser bar into those little clips that are provided, if you can see. And then we need to put that onto the back of the assembly. It's a bit fiddly. I'm going to find the top hole there and get the first screw in to hold it in place. Yeah, once that one's in, it's a lot easier. It holds that in place, and get the other 2 screws in now and do those up. One in there, and the other in there. Okay, and then it's just a case of clipping the top balls into those ball joints. Well, I've got to tell you, I struggled to get those on. What I did in the end was I ended up putting it flat on the table, so I pushed this ball connector into it because I couldn't get any pliers or anything to it. But yeah, bit of a struggle, but now it's on, and now both the suspension sides move up and down together. Step 19 is attaching the rear guard, which is basically made up of parts B13 and B14 that go together like so. And you need the 2 long machine screws, a 36 and a 27mm, 2 flange nuts, and 1 self-tapper 12mm. So at the back, those top 2 lugs go inside that mount there, and we'll just get through the BB2. Then the BB1, the longer of the machine screws, goes through the bottom. Put the flange nuts on, and then finish off with the self-tapper just to hold these 2 pieces together, and that's your rear guard attached. On step 20 we're going to make up the front arms. I've already done the left one, and it ends up looking like this. So you're going to need F1 and F2. Tamiya have nicely stamped on these 1 and 2 because they are different. The lower arms, which are D1s, doesn't matter which one, they're both the same, but these do matter. So number 1 is for the left hand side. I'll just show you building up the right hand side. First thing you've got to do is F2 for this one. Again, 2 stamped on there. Put your 5mm ball joint in the bottom, only goes in one way, there's only one hole. Put your bearings, 1 in each side. Get your bottom arm. We need to put on another 5mm ball joint into that one hole. Again, don't do this too tight because this plastic is very soft and it will strip. Then you need to put your shaft through F2. Again, I'm going to hold that in place with R-clip, and then put the shaft through part C3. Note that this arm is pointing up and the ball joint is pointing down as you look at it. And the next thing we need to do is to get the big step screws, which are BB5s. And now this is where another word of caution, part F2 where we're going to screw into has got a screw thread already in that plastic, so you've got to make sure that we actually go into that thread and not kind of cut our own thread. So what I recommend you do is get it in place, get your screwdriver, and then back screw it until you feel a click, and that'll be with when it's lined up with the thread. It's just there, and then you can screw it in. It should be nice and easy to screw it in. If you cross threading it, it will be really tight, so make sure you use those threads. And then the same for the bottom. Once that's finished, get your D1 again. Note the alignment, the ball joint facing that way, the arm facing the same direction, and put that in place. Get the smaller BB9 screw pin and fit that on. Front arm's finished, so on to step 21. Now we're going to attach the upper arms that we made earlier to the front gearbox case. I'll put the one in there. It's quite simple. You need your black plastic part G8, put it over that long joint, pop it in that gap, and put in your BB9 screw pin. Do the same both sides, noting that each of those hexes on the top joints is pointing to the right hand side. Then we can put in the long and the short gearbox joints. The long one goes in from the left. Make sure that you put inside that black O-ring in there first and just pop that in. And the short one goes in the other side again with the O-ring inside the cup. And now for the infamous A5 part. Now this is made of that hard brittle plastic, and this is renowned for breaking across here. If you get an impact onto the bottom A-arms or wishbones, it will break that, and that's probably caused by that thread on the screw pin that's designed to go in there putting pressure on that brittle plastic. So I'm not going to use these. I've got my own solution. I've got these stainless steel hop-up shafts. I think they're for an MO5. I got them left over, but they are too long, but it doesn't matter. I've got a workaround for that, so I'll show you what I'm going to do. What I've done is I've made a metal plate. This is made out of aluminium. It's only about 1 millimetre thick, and what I did was I've matched it up to the back, cut the shape out of a big piece of aluminium like this. I just cut it out with some tin snips, shaped it with a file, and got it in place and marked the holes like so. Drilled those, and now that fits across the front. I did have to put these little notches in to go over the webbing on the plastic piece. So yeah, there's a gap, but like I say, these shafts are far too long, so that's actually going to help me. And there's nothing in the way at the front, there's just a bumper that comes up over here, so it doesn't matter if they stick out a little bit. So that's what I'm going to do. So we need to mount this. Obviously, if you haven't got any kind of bracket, you just screw that on, but I'm going to put this bracket on first. Then you've got your two 12mm tapping screws, and then I'll go through and hold all this in place. And to finish this step, you need a BB2, which is 27mm machine screw. That just goes through the hole there and holds the bottom of that bracket and fit on your flange nut. So step 22, we're going to attach the front arms that we've made to the front gearbox, obviously, but as I said, you probably will be using these step screws or screw pins, but I'm not going to use these. As I said, I've got my own stainless bars. They're a bit long, but we'll see. I've put that bracket on the front, so I'll just show you. We're going to get the right arm, make sure the steering arm's pointing backwards, and I'm going to put my stainless steel pin in from the back. Got a washer and a split pin on it. As you can see, it does stick out too far, but I've had a look in my little spares box. I've got some spacers here. Again, these are Tamiya hop-ups, so I'm going to put one of these on each of those pins, and it should be the right length. Yeah, that looks like it'll be okay. I'll get a circlip on that. Okay, so the metal plate should stop when the arms hit anything, these shafts from pulling out or cracking through that plastic A5 part. I think it's going to work anyway, so a bit Heath Robinson, but it does the job. I think it actually looks quite cool with those spacers on. So what we've got to do now is get the top arms connected. So pop in the shaft, and then we need 15mm long machine screw. Pop it through the ball joints, put a washer on, through the hole, and put the flange nut to hold it in place. And you should end up with something like this. On to step 23, we're going to attach the front stabiliser, which is the thinner of the two bars. First thing we need to do is you've got this kind of black silicone tubing, so we've got to cut 4 3mm lengths of that. I don't think it matters exactly if it's 3mm, somewhere close. So I've got some cutters here. I'm going to just chop it into 4 little pieces. So first push on a little bit of tube, then screw on that brass ball joint, which is a BB15. I think we need to leave about 3mm or so sticking out for the other end that's going to go on after we've fitted it into your C5 plastic part. And same both sides. And get part C5, and I'm going to clip that on with the holes facing the ball joint, the little holes in the shaft. And then put the other bit of silicone tube over that thread, like so. Now you need plastic parts G4 and G1. It just fits in there, and 12mm self tapper, and that goes straight through into this hole, the gearbox case. Now to fit that stabiliser, what we need to do is poke it through below the upper arms but above the drive shafts, and that's going to go into this slot like that. You need plastic parts B6 and B4. Through that I've put a 15mm self tapper, which are the darker screws, and a washer in the plastic part, and then that goes, and this is going to sandwich the whole thing together once we've got these screws in place. So that's the stabiliser held in place now by B6 and B4 with the screws. We've got the stabiliser in the right place, so we just need to connect these parts C5 onto the ball joints. Okay, and again now when you move the one suspension side up and down, the other one goes with it, so the stabiliser is fixed correctly. And I think I've gone on long enough now. I haven't quite finished parts bag B. It's onto the shop build next, but I think we'll draw this part of the guide to a close here. Thanks for following along. I hope it's been useful. I really hope you join me on the next part, which will be part 3. Thanks again.